Chapter 1. The Forbidden Depths. Dr. Marina Delacroix stood on the deck of the research vessel Leviathan's Eye, staring into the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The year was 5000 AD, and humanity had colonized Mars, built cities in the clouds of Venus, and even established outposts in the outer solar system. Yet the deepest parts of Earth's oceans remained as mysterious as they had been millennia ago. "Professor, we're approaching the Mariana Trench," announced her assistant, Dr. James Chen, his voice carrying an undertone of unease that had become common among deep-sea researchers. "Depth readings show we're at 35,000 feet and descending." Marina nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls of their state-of-the-art submersible. The Abyssal Pioneer was humanity's most advanced deep-sea exploration vehicle, equipped with quantum sonar, bioluminescent communication arrays, and pressure-resistant hulls that could withstand the crushing depths of the ocean floor. But despite all their technological advances, there was something about the deepest parts of the ocean that made even the bravest explorers hesitate. Ships that ventured too deep often returned with crews suffering from unexplained psychological trauma. Sonar readings frequently detected massive structures that shouldn't exist. And most disturbing of all, deep-sea cameras occasionally captured glimpses of movement that suggested intelligence far beyond any known marine life. "Marina, look at this," James called out, his voice tight with concern. "The quantum sonar is picking up something massive. It's geometric, artificial." The holographic display materialized before them, showing a three-dimensional map of the ocean floor. But instead of the expected rocky terrain, the sonar revealed vast structures that stretch for miles, towering spires, interconnected domes, and what appeared to be transportation networks carved into the seafloor itself. "That's impossible," Marina whispered, but even as she spoke, she knew they were looking at something that would change everything humanity thought it knew about Earth's history. Suddenly, their communication systems crackled to life with a signal unlike anything in their databases. The transmission wasn't random noise or natural phenomena. It was structured, purposeful, and unmistakably intelligent. "Surface dwellers," a voice spoke in perfect English, though it carried an otherworldly resonance that seemed to come from the water itself. "You have ventured too far into our domain. Turn back now or face the consequences of your curiosity." Marina and James exchanged terrified glances. In all their years of deep-sea exploration, they had never encountered anything like this. The voice wasn't coming from their radio. It was somehow being transmitted directly through the water, using the ocean itself as a communication medium. "This is Dr. Marina Delacroix of the Global Ocean Research Institute," Marina responded, her scientific training overriding her fear. "We come in peace, seeking only knowledge." "Who are you?" The response came immediately, and with it, the ocean around their submersible began to glow with an ethereal blue light. "We are the Abyssal," the voice replied. "We are the children of the depths, the survivors of the Great Flood, the guardians of the true Earth, and you, surface dwellers, have finally forced our hand. If you're feeling the same mixture of awe and terror that Marina is experiencing right now, subscribe to the Multiverse of Imagination to dive deeper into stories that reveal the hidden mysteries lurking beneath our everyday world. The truth about our planet's deepest secrets is about to surface. Chapter 2. The Revelation. The water around the Abyssal Pioneer suddenly erupted in a symphony of bioluminescent patterns, creating a light show more spectacular than anything Marina had ever witnessed. But this wasn't just a display. It was a language, a form of communication that used the entire ocean as its medium. From the depths below, shapes began to emerge. At first, Marina thought they were seeing some kind of advanced underwater vehicles. But as the forms drew closer, she realized with shock that they were beings, humanoid in shape, but adapted for life in the crushing depths of the ocean. The abyssal who approached their submersible was tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and what appeared to be gill slits along his neck that pulsed with the same blue light that illuminated the water. His skin had a translucent quality that seemed to shift between human flesh tones and the deep blue-green of the ocean depths. "I am Nerion, speaker for the Deep Councils," the being communicated, his voice now clearly coming from the figure outside their vessel. "For 5,000 years, we have watched your kind poison the surface world, wage endless wars, and threaten the very existence of our planet. We had hoped you would learn wisdom, but recent events have forced us to reveal ourselves." Marina's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. "You're human? How is this possible?" Nerion's expression, remarkably human despite his aquatic adaptations, grew solemn. "We are what humanity became when the great flood covered the earth. While your ancestors built arks and sought high ground, some of us chose a different path. We adapted, evolved, learned to breathe the water that had become our world. The submersible's historical databases automatically began cross-referencing Nerion's words with ancient texts and geological records. The results were staggering. Evidence of a global flood event approximately 7,000 years ago, mass extinctions, and unexplained gaps in the archaeological record. When the waters receded and your kind returned to the surface, Nerion continued, we remained below. We built cities in the deepest trenches, developed technologies that work in harmony with the ocean rather than against it. We became the guardians of the true Earth, the 71% of your planet that you have never truly understood." James leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. "Your technology, how advanced are you?" In response, Nerion gestured toward the depths below. The ocean floor suddenly became transparent, revealing a sight that took Marina's breath away. Vast cities stretched across the abyssal plains, their architecture flowing and organic, yet clearly advanced beyond anything on the surface. Streams of light connected different districts, and she could see thousands of abyssal moving through what appeared to be transportation tubes filled with water. "We have learned to harness the power of thermal vents, to cultivate the deep-sea ecosystems, to build with living coral and bioengineered organisms. Our cities are not separate from the ocean. They are part of it, growing and evolving with the natural world." But then Nerion's expression darkened, and the bioluminescent patterns around them shifted to more ominous colors. "However, your recent actions have threatened not just the surface world, but our realm as well. The nuclear incident at the Pacific fusion plant 3 days ago has begun leaking radiation into our deepest sanctuaries. You have finally crossed a line that we cannot ignore." Marina felt her blood run cold. The Pacific fusion plant disaster had been classified at the highest levels, with only a few dozen people on Earth knowing the true extent of the contamination. "How could these beings know about it?" "We know because the ocean knows," Nerion replied, apparently reading her thoughts. "Every drop of water on this planet is connected. Every poison you release into the sea eventually reaches us. For millennia, we have absorbed your pollution, filtered your toxins, and maintained the balance that keeps your world habitable. But this latest contamination threatens to destroy ecosystems that have taken thousands of years to cultivate." The implications of Nerion's words hit Marina like a physical blow. If these beings had been secretly maintaining Earth's oceanic systems, then humanity's survival had depended on their hidden guardianship for thousands of years. "What do you want from us?" Marina asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Nerion's reply confirmed her worst suspicions. "The Deep Councils have voted. If the surface dwellers cannot learn to coexist with the ocean, then the ocean will reclaim the surface. The age of human dominance is ending. Dr. Delacroix, the only question is whether it ends in cooperation or conquest." Chapter 3. The Deep Councils. Nerion extended what appeared to be a breathing apparatus toward Marina and James, a bioengineered organism that resembled a translucent jellyfish, with delicate tendrils, if you wish to understand the choice before your species. You must see our world with your own eyes, Nerion explained. These symbionts will allow you to breathe underwater and withstand the pressure of the deep. But know this, once you have witnessed the true extent of our civilization, you cannot return to the surface unchanged. Marina looked at James, seeing her own mixture of terror and fascination reflected in his eyes. As scientists, they had dedicated their lives to understanding the unknown. This was the discovery of a lifetime, possibly the most important moment in human history. "We accept," Marina said, taking the bioorganism. The moment it touched her skin, she felt a strange tingling sensation as microscopic tendrils integrated with her respiratory system. The transformation was remarkable. As they exited their submersible into the crushing depths of the ocean, Marina found she could breathe the water as easily as air. The pressure that should have killed them instantly felt no more uncomfortable than a gentle embrace. Nerion led them through the water with fluid grace, his movements more like flying than swimming. As they descended deeper into the abyss, the true scope of the abyssal civilization revealed itself. The cities were beyond anything Marina had imagined. Towering spires of living coral stretched toward the surface, their surfaces covered with bioluminescent patterns that served as both decoration and communication networks. Gardens of deep-sea plants created parks and recreational areas, while schools of engineered fish provided both transportation and food. "This is Atlantica Prime," Nerion explained as they approached the largest city, home to 12 million abyssal and the seat of the deep councils. It has grown here for over 4,000 years, fed by the thermal vents and protected by the crushing depths that your kind cannot survive. But as they moved through the city, Marina noticed something troubling. Many of the abyssal they encountered showed signs of illness. Their bioluminescent patterns were dim, their movements sluggish. Some areas of the city appeared to be dying, with coral structures turning grey and lifeless. "The radiation from your fusion plant disaster," Nerion said sadly, noticing her observations. "It has already begun to affect our most sensitive ecosystems. The thermal vent gardens that feed our cities are showing signs of contamination. If this continues, millions of my people will die." They arrived at the council chambers, a massive structure that seemed to be carved from a single piece of living rock. Inside, representatives from abyssal cities around the world had gathered, beings adapted to different oceanic environments, from the ice-covered Arctic depths to the volcanic trenches of the Pacific Ring of Fire. The debate was already in progress, and Marina was shocked to realize she could understand every word. The biosymbiont wasn't just allowing her to breathe, it was translating the complex harmonic language of the abyssal into concepts her human mind could grasp. "The surface dwellers have proven they cannot be trusted with the stewardship of the planet," declared a speaker from the Atlantic deep cities. "Their latest contamination threatens to destroy ecosystems that predate their entire civilization. We must act before it's too late." "But they are still our cousins," argued another voice from the Pacific thermal communities. "We share the same origins, the same potential for wisdom. Perhaps this crisis can finally bring our peoples together." What would you do if you discovered that humanity's survival had always depended on the secret guardianship of another civilization? Leave your comment and share your thoughts on whether cooperation between these two branches of humanity is possible, or if conflict is inevitable. Chapter 4. The War Machines of the Deep. As the debate raged in the council chambers, Nerion led Marina and James to an observation deck that offered a panoramic view of the ocean floor. What they saw there made Marina's blood run cold. Stretching across the abyssal plains were massive formations that could only be described as military installations. Creatures the size of blue whales moved in organized formations. But these weren't natural animals. They were bioengineered war machines. their bodies bristling with what appeared to be organic weapons systems. The Leviathan core, Nerion explained grimly. For 3,000 years, they have slumbered in the deepest trenches, waiting for the day when the surface world would threaten our existence. Each one is capable of generating tsunamis, controlling ocean currents, and releasing toxins that could devastate coastal cities. Marina watched in horrified fascination as one of the creatures demonstrated its capabilities. With a sound that resonated through the water like a living earthquake, it generated a pressure wave that carved a canyon in the seafloor. If such a creature surfaced near a populated coastline, the destruction would be unimaginable. But they are not our only weapons, Nerion continued, leading them to another section of the installation. Here, Marina saw something that challenged everything she thought she knew about Earth's geology. Massive, biomechanical structures were attached to underwater mountain ranges, their tendrils extending deep into the Earth's crust. Readings on her enhanced vision showed that these devices were somehow connected to the planet's tectonic systems. The tectonic harmonizers, Nerion explained. And we have learned to influence the movement of the Earth's plates, to direct the flow of magma, to control the very foundations of your continents. If the Deep Councils vote for war, we can sink entire land masses beneath the waves. James, who had been silent throughout their tour, finally found his voice. This is genocide you're talking about. Billions of innocent people would die. Nerion's expression showed genuine pain. Do you think this decision comes easily to us? We have watched your species for millennia, hoping you would learn wisdom. We have seen your capacity for love, creativity, and growth. But we have also seen your endless wars, your destruction of ecosystems, your inability to live in harmony with the world that sustains you. He gestured toward a display showing real-time data from the surface world. Images of polluted cities, dying forests, and contaminated oceans filled the holographic screen. Your latest nuclear disaster is not an isolated incident. It is the culmination of centuries of reckless behavior. The radiation is already spreading through the deep ocean currents, threatening ecosystems that have existed since before your civilization began. If we do nothing, both our peoples will eventually perish. Marina realized that they were witnessing a moment that would determine the fate of two civilizations. The Abyssal had the power to destroy the surface world, but they were also offering a choice: cooperation or annihilation. What would cooperation look like? Marina asked. Nerion's bioluminescent patterns shifted to more hopeful colors. Integration. Your people would need to abandon their destructive technologies and learn to live in harmony with the ocean. Some would join us in the depths, while others would remain on the surface as guardians of the land. All major decisions affecting the planet would be made jointly by both peoples. And if we refuse, then the oceans will rise, the continents will sink, and the earth will return to the aquatic world it was meant to be. Your people will have the choice to adapt as we did, or to perish with the civilization they refuse to abandon. As if summoned by their conversation, a messenger arrived with urgent news from the council chambers. The debate had reached a critical point, and the representatives were calling for a final vote. Marina realized that she and James might be the only surface dwellers who could influence this decision. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of two marine biologists who had stumbled upon the greatest secret in Earth's history. Chapter 5. The Surface Ultimatum. The council chambers fell, silent as Marina and James were brought before the assembled representatives of the abyssal civilization. Hundreds of beings from every corner of the deep ocean watched them with eyes that held the wisdom of millennia and the weight of an impossible decision. Surface dwellers, spoke the prime speaker, an ancient abyssal whose bioluminescent patterns pulsed with the slow rhythm of deep ocean currents. You have seen our world, witnessed our power, and learned of the choice before your people. What message will you carry to the surface? Marina stepped forward, her mind racing as she tried to find words that could bridge the gap between two civilizations. Honored speakers, we understand your anger and your fear. The nuclear contamination threatens both our peoples, and we take full responsibility for our species' failures. But I ask you to consider that not all surface dwellers are responsible for these crimes against the ocean. A representative from the Arctic deep cities responded with patterns of skeptical blue light. Your leaders knew the risks of their nuclear technology, yet they proceeded anyway. Your corporations have poisoned our waters for profit. Your governments have ignored the warnings of your own scientists. How can we trust a species that destroys its own home? James found his courage and spoke up. Because some of us are trying to change. There are millions of people on the surface working to heal the damage, to develop clean technologies, to protect the environment. If you destroy our civilization, you'll be killing the very people who could help create a better future. The prime speaker's pattern shifted to contemplative purple. Perhaps, but time is running short. The radiation from your fusion plant continues to spread, and our deep-sea ecosystems are dying. We cannot wait for your species to slowly evolve wisdom over centuries. Nerion stepped forward, his patterns showing urgent orange hues. There is another way. We could reveal ourselves to the surface world, share our technologies, and work together to heal the damage. But this would require your leaders to surrender much of their power and your people to accept a fundamental change in how they live. Marina's heart leaped at the possibility. What kind of changes? All nuclear technology would be dismantled and replaced with biothermal systems based on our designs. Coastal cities would be partially submerged and integrated with our underwater communities. Ocean pollution would cease immediately, and all major industrial decisions would require approval from joint human abyssal councils. The implications were staggering. It would mean the end of human civilization as it currently existed, but it might also mean the beginning of something far better. A truly sustainable society that worked in harmony with the planet's natural systems. However, the prime speaker continued, we have learned not to trust the promises of surface dwellers. We will give your people exactly 72 hours to begin implementing these changes. If we do not see concrete action, the shutdown of the fusion plant, the cessation of deep-sea mining, and the public acknowledgement of our existence, then we will assume your answer is refusal. Marina felt the weight of the ultimatum. 72 hours to convince the world's governments to abandon technologies they had spent centuries developing, to admit the existence of a civilization they had never known existed, and to fundamentally restructure human society. And if they refuse? James asked, though he clearly dreaded the answer. The prime speaker's patterns turned to the deep red of thermal vents. Then the Leviathan core will rise. The first wave will target your coastal nuclear facilities, ensuring they cannot cause further contamination. The second wave will generate tsunamis that will reclaim the land for the ocean. The third wave will activate the tectonic harmonizers, reshaping the continents themselves. Your people will have the choice to adapt to an aquatic world or to perish with their dying civilization. We take no pleasure in this decision, but we will not allow the surface world to destroy the ocean that sustains all life on this planet. As the council session ended, Marina and James were escorted back to their submersible, their minds reeling from everything they had witnessed. The biosymbionts were gently removed, returning them to their normal human physiology. But the memory of breathing water and seeing the vast abyssal civilization would remain with them forever. If you were in Marina's position, how would you convince the world's leaders to accept such a radical transformation? Subscribe to the multiverse of imagination to explore more stories that challenge us to imagine different ways of living and the difficult choices that come with survival. Chapter 6. The Race to the Surface. The ascent to the surface felt like traveling between worlds. As the abyssal pioneer rose through the crushing depths, Marina and James worked frantically to compile their evidence and prepare for what might be the most important presentation in human history. "Marina, look at this data," James said, his voice tight with urgency. "The radiation readings from the fusion plant are worse than we thought. If the Abyssal are right about the contamination spreading through the deep ocean currents, we're looking at a global ecological disaster within months." Marina studied the holographic displays showing the radiation plume's projected path. The contamination would reach every major ocean basin within a year, potentially triggering mass extinctions that would make previous environmental disasters look trivial by comparison. "We have to make them understand," Marina said, uploading their recordings to quantum-encrypted storage devices. "The world's leaders need to see what we've seen, understand what's at stake." As they broke the surface, their communication systems immediately exploded with incoming messages. The Global Ocean Research Institute, the United Nations Environmental Council, and a dozen government agencies were all demanding immediate reports on their deep-sea mission. But Marina knew that standard bureaucratic channels would take weeks or months to process their findings. They had 72 hours to change the world. "James, patch me through to the Global Emergency Broadcast Network. Authorization code Delta 77 Alpha. Marina, that's for planetary-scale disasters only. If you use that code without proper authorization, then I'll be court-martialed for saving the human race," Marina interrupted. "Do it." Within minutes, Marina found herself connected to the most powerful communication network on Earth, capable of reaching every government, military installation, and research facility on the planet simultaneously. "This is Dr. Marina Delacroix of the Global Ocean Research Institute," she began, her voice being transmitted to leaders across the globe. "I am declaring a code-red planetary emergency. We have made contact with a previously unknown human civilization that possesses the capability to end life on the surface world. This is not a drill." The response was immediate and chaotic. Government officials demanded proof, military leaders wanted threat assessments, and scientists insisted on peer review of her findings. But Marina had anticipated this reaction. "I am transmitting full video documentation, sonar readings, and biological samples that prove the existence of the abyssal civilization. You have 68 hours to respond to their ultimatum before they begin military action against all coastal populations." As the evidence spread across the global networks, the reaction was swift and dramatic. Emergency sessions were called in every major capital, military forces were placed on high alert, and the world's top scientists began analyzing the data Marina had provided. But even as the evidence mounted, Marina could see the predictable human response taking shape. Instead of focusing on the environmental cooperation the Abyssal had offered, many governments were already discussing military options, defensive strategies, and ways to exploit abyssal technology for their own purposes. "They're not listening," James said, monitoring the global communications traffic. "Half the world leaders think this is an elaborate hoax, and the other half are treating it as an invasion to be repelled." Marina felt despair creeping into her heart. Even faced with irrefutable evidence and an existential threat, humanity seemed incapable of the fundamental change necessary for survival. But then, unexpected allies began to emerge. Environmental groups around the world rallied to support the abyssal ultimatum. Indigenous communities, who had long warned about the dangers of industrial civilization, spoke out in favor of cooperation. Even some progressive governments began calling for immediate action to meet the abyssal demands. "Marina, you need to see this," James said, pulling up a global opinion poll. 63% of the world's population supports negotiating with the abyssal. It's the governments and corporations that are resisting. Marina realized that the real battle wasn't between humans and the abyssal. It was between those who wanted to preserve the destructive status quo and those who were willing to embrace Radical change for the sake of survival. With less than 60 hours remaining, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Chapter 7. The Deepest Conspiracy. As Marina worked frantically to build support for cooperation with the Abyssal, she began to uncover disturbing evidence that some elements of the surface world had known about the deep-sea civilization for decades. James, look at these classified documents that just came through the quantum leak channels, Marina said, her voice filled with shock and anger. The Global Defense Consortium has been tracking anomalous deep-sea activity for over 50 years. The files revealed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government and corporate power. Military submarines had occasionally encountered abyssal scouts, but instead of revealing these contacts to the public, a secret cabal had worked to suppress the information while attempting to develop weapons capable of fighting an underwater war. They knew, Marina whispered, scrolling through decades of cover-ups, disappeared researchers, and falsified reports. They knew about the Abyssal, and they've been preparing for this confrontation instead of seeking peaceful contact. Even more disturbing were the recent files showing that the Pacific fusion plant disaster hadn't been an accident. Corporate executives, knowing that deep-sea radiation would force the Abyssal to reveal themselves, had deliberately sabotaged their own safety systems to create a crisis that would justify military action against the underwater civilization. Marina, we have incoming priority transmission from the Mariana Trench, James announced urgently. Nerion's image appeared on their communication screen, but his usual calm demeanor had been replaced by obvious distress. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed with angry red hues. Dr. Delacroix, we have detected massive military movements on the surface. Your governments are deploying weapon systems toward our cities instead of addressing the environmental crisis. Is this your people's answer to our offer of cooperation? Marina felt sick as she realized the implications. Nerion, please understand, not all of us knew about these preparations. There are forces within our governments that have been planning for conflict instead of cooperation. Then your species is even more divided than we realized, Nerion replied sadly. The Deep Councils are reconvening. Many now believe that peaceful coexistence is impossible if your own leaders prefer war to environmental responsibility. Wait, Marina called out desperately. Give us more time. There are millions of people on the surface who want to work with you, who are willing to change. Don't let the actions of a few warmongers doom both our civilizations. Nerion's patterns shifted to contemplative blue. Perhaps there is another way. If the surface dwellers who truly seek cooperation were to join us voluntarily, we could demonstrate that integration is possible. But they would need to come to us before the military conflict begins. Marina understood immediately what Nerion was suggesting. A mass migration of environmentally conscious humans to the abyssal cities could serve as both a demonstration of good faith and a preservation of human genetic diversity. If the surface world destroyed itself, how many people could you accommodate? Marina asked. Our cities could support perhaps 10 million surface dwellers initially, with the possibility of expansion as new communities are established. But they would need to undergo the biological adaptation process and commit to living permanently in our realm. Marina looked at James, seeing the same desperate hope in his eyes that she felt in her heart. It wasn't the salvation of all humanity, but it might be the preservation of the best parts of human civilization. James, we need to get this information to the environmental networks immediately. If enough people volunteer for the migration, it might convince the Abyssal that cooperation is possible. As they began broadcasting the migration opportunity to environmental groups around the world, Marina couldn't help but wonder if they were witnessing the end of surface civilization and the beginning of something entirely new. What would you choose if faced with this decision? Stay on the surface and fight for change, or migrate to the depths and help build a new kind of human civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which path you think offers the best hope for humanity's future. Chapter 8. The Great Migration. The response to the migration announcement was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, over 50 million people had registered their willingness to undergo biological adaptation and join the abyssal civilization. Environmental scientists, indigenous leaders, artists, teachers, and millions of ordinary citizens who had grown disillusioned with surface society's destructive path volunteered to leave everything behind for the chance to build a sustainable future. Marina found herself at the center of the largest voluntary migration in human history. Temporary processing centers were established at coastal locations around the world, where abyssal bioengineers worked with human volunteers to begin the adaptation process. The transformation is remarkable. Dr. Sarah Kim reported from the processing center in San Francisco Bay. The biosymbionts don't just allow underwater breathing, they're enhancing human physiology in ways we never imagined. Improved pressure tolerance, enhanced vision in low-light conditions, even increased resistance to radiation. But even as the migration proceeded, the military buildup on the surface continued. Admiral Harrison Blake, commander of the Global Defense Consortium's Deep Strike Force, had convinced several world leaders that the abyssal represented an existential threat that could only be met with overwhelming force. These creatures have been hiding in our oceans for millennia, watching us, studying our weaknesses, Blake declared in a classified briefing that was leaked to the global networks. They possess weapons that could destroy our civilization in hours. We cannot allow them to dictate terms to the human race. Marina watched in horror as massive naval fleets converged on the world's deepest ocean trenches, armed with experimental weapons designed specifically for underwater warfare. Quantum torpedoes, pressure bombs, and biotoxic agents that could theoretically penetrate even the deepest abyssal cities. Nerion, you have to understand, Marina pleaded during an emergency communication session. The people migrating to your cities represent the best of humanity. But there are others who see only threat and opportunity for conquest. They're planning to attack your cities. Nerion's response was grim. We are aware of their preparations. Our deep current sensors have detected their weapons, analyzed their capabilities. They do not understand that their technology is primitive compared to what we have developed over millennia of underwater warfare. Then you're going to fight back? We have no choice. The Deep Councils have voted to activate the Leviathan Core if your military forces enter our territorial waters. But Dr. Delacroix, we want you to know that the migrants who have joined us will be protected. They have become part of our civilization now, and we defend our own. Marina realized that the world was about to witness a war unlike anything in human history, a conflict between the surface and the depths, between two branches of humanity that had evolved along completely different paths. Is there any way to stop this? Marina asked desperately. Nerion's bioluminescent patterns showed deep sadness. Perhaps. If your surface leaders were to recall their fleets and begin genuine environmental reforms, we might still find a path to peace. But they would need to act within the next 12 hours. Marina knew that 12 hours wasn't enough time to change the minds of military leaders who had spent decades preparing for this moment. But she had to try. James, patch me through to Admiral Blake directly. If I can make him understand what he's really facing. But even as Marina prepared for what might be her final attempt at preventing catastrophe, reports began coming in from around the globe. The first abyssal scouts were rising from the depths, their bioluminescent forms visible to surface vessels for the first time in recorded history. The war between the surface and the depths was about to begin, and Marina found herself caught between two worlds, desperately trying to prevent the destruction of both. Chapter 9. The War of Two Worlds. The first shots of the war were fired not by human weapons, but by the ocean itself. Admiral Blake's Deep Strike Fleet had positioned itself directly above the Mariana Trench, preparing to deploy their experimental weapons into the deepest parts of the abyssal civilization. But as the first quantum torpedoes were launched, something extraordinary happened. The water around the fleet began to move with purpose and intelligence. Massive currents, controlled by the abyssal tectonic harmonizers, created whirlpools that pulled the torpedoes off course. Bioengineered organisms rose from the depths to intercept the weapons, their bodies designed to absorb and neutralize the quantum explosions. "This is impossible," Blake muttered, watching his most advanced weapons rendered useless by creatures that seemed to treat the ocean as an extension of their own bodies. How are they controlling the water itself? His answer came in the form of the first Leviathan. The creature that rose from the depths was beyond anything in human experience, a biomechanical entity the size of a city, its body a fusion of living tissue and advanced technology. Bioluminescent patterns along its flanks pulsed with communication signals, while organic weapon systems emerged from its hide like the spines of some impossible sea urchin. "All ships, open fire," Blake commanded, but his fleet's weapons had no effect on the Leviathan's bio-adaptive armor. Laser cannons were absorbed by photosynthetic skin cells. Kinetic projectiles were deflected by electromagnetic fields generated by the creature's nervous system. And even nuclear warheads were neutralized by specialized organs that converted radiation into harmless energy. The Leviathan's response was swift and devastating. A sound wave generated by its massive vocal organs created a pressure pulse that disabled every electronic system in the fleet. Ships that had been marvels of human engineering were reduced to floating hulks in seconds. But the Leviathan didn't destroy the fleet. Instead, it began to sing. The sound that emerged from the creature was hauntingly beautiful, a deep, harmonic resonance that seemed to speak directly to the human soul. Sailors throughout the fleet found themselves weeping as the song conveyed emotions and concepts that transcended language. The pain of watching the ocean die, the loneliness of millennia spent in hiding, the desperate hope for reconciliation between two branches of the same species. "Admiral," one of Blake's officers said, tears streaming down his face, I think they're trying to communicate." Similar scenes were playing out across the globe as abyssal forces emerged from every major ocean trench. But instead of the devastating attacks that military leaders had expected, the deep-sea beings were demonstrating their power while simultaneously offering opportunities for dialogue. In the Pacific, a group of Leviathans used their control over ocean currents to prevent a tsunami that would have devastated the Japanese coast. A tsunami that had been triggered by the military's own seismic weapons. In the Atlantic, abyssal bioengineers began actively cleaning up the radiation from the fusion plant disaster, their organisms literally consuming the contamination and converting it into harmless compounds. Marina, monitoring the global situation from the Migration Processing Center, realized that the abyssal were fighting a war unlike any in human history, a war designed not to destroy their enemies, but to demonstrate the futility of conflict and the benefits of cooperation. "They're not trying to win," she told James in amazement. "They're trying to teach us, but not everyone was ready to learn." In several locations, military commanders continued their attacks despite the obvious superiority of abyssal technology. These forces found themselves facing the full power of creatures that had evolved for warfare in the most hostile environment on Earth. The battle for the Arctic Ocean became a demonstration of what the abyssal could do when truly threatened. Ice-adapted leviathans emerged from beneath the polar ice cap, their bodies generating controlled avalanches that buried military installations while leaving civilian populations untouched. The precision of their attacks was surgical. They could destroy a weapons depot while leaving a hospital next door completely unharmed. As this unprecedented war unfolds, Which side do you think represents the future of humanity? Subscribe to the Multiverse of Imagination to explore more stories that challenge our assumptions about conflict, cooperation, and what it truly means to be human. Chapter 10. The New Covenant. The turning point came when Admiral Blake, his fleet disabled but his crew unharmed, found himself face to face with Nerion in the depths of the Pacific Ocean. The abyssal leader had personally risen to the surface, his bioluminescent form creating a pillar of light in the dark waters around Blake's flagship. Using the same biosymbiont technology that had allowed Marina to breathe underwater, Nerion enabled Blake to survive in the ocean depths for a crucial conversation. "Admiral Blake," Nerion communicated as they descended toward the abyssal city of Pacifica Deep. "You have seen our power. You know that we could destroy every surface vessel in your fleet within minutes. Yet here you are, alive and unharmed. Why do you think that is?" Blake, his military training warring with the evidence of his own eyes, struggled to maintain his hostile stance. "You're trying to demonstrate superiority before demanding our surrender." "No, Admiral. We are trying to demonstrate that superiority without compassion is meaningless. Your people and mine share the same origins, the same potential for wisdom and growth. We do not wish to rule over you. We wish to save you from yourselves." As they approached the city, Blake saw something that shattered his preconceptions about the conflict. Thousands of human migrants were already living and working alongside the abyssal, their bio-adapted forms, allowing them to contribute to the underwater civilization while retaining their essential humanity. These volunteers represent the future we offer to all surface dwellers, Nerion explained. Not conquest, but integration. Not the destruction of human civilization, but its evolution into something sustainable and harmonious with the natural world. Blake watched human engineers working with abyssal biotechnicians to design new forms of architecture that grew rather than being built. He saw human artists collaborating with deep-sea beings to create forms of beauty that existed nowhere else in the universe. Most importantly, he saw children, human and abyssal, playing together in the bioluminescent gardens, representing a future where the division between surface and depth would become meaningless. "The choice is still before your people," Nerion continued. "You can continue to fight a war you cannot win, destroying both our civilizations in the process. Or you can join us in healing the damage that has been done to our shared world." Blake's response would determine the fate of both species. As a military leader, he had been trained to see every situation in terms of victory or defeat. But what he was witnessing transcended those simple categories. "What guarantees do we have?" Blake asked finally. "How do we know you won't simply eliminate surface civilization once we've lowered our defenses?" Nerion's pattern shifted to show deep understanding. "The same guarantee we have always had, Admiral. The ocean connects all life on this planet. If we destroy you, we destroy ourselves. If you poison the seas, you poison us. We are not separate species competing for resources. We are one. Species that must learn to live as one world." The conversation was being broadcast to every government and military installation on Earth. As Blake and Nerion spoke, a remarkable transformation began to take place. Military units around the globe began standing down, their commanders recognizing the futility of fighting an enemy that refused to be an enemy. Environmental groups, indigenous communities, and progressive governments formed a coalition demanding immediate implementation of the Abyssal Environmental Accords. The fusion plant was shut down within hours, deep-sea mining operations were suspended, and emergency protocols were established to prevent future contamination of the ocean systems. But perhaps most importantly, the migration program was expanded and formalized. Instead of a desperate exodus, it became a planned integration program that would allow both civilizations to learn from each other while healing the damage that had been done to their shared planet. Marina found herself appointed as the first human abyssal liaison, responsible for coordinating the integration process and ensuring that both species could coexist peacefully. It was a role she had never imagined, but one that felt like the culmination of her life's work. "James, look at this," Marina said, reviewing the latest reports from integration sites around the world. "The bioadaptation process isn't just allowing humans to live underwater, it's actually reversing some of the genetic damage caused by centuries of pollution and radiation exposure. And the abyssal are learning from us too," James replied, showing her reports of deep-sea communities adopting human innovations in art, music, and social organization. It's not just coexistence, it's genuine symbiosis. As Marina stood on the deck of the research vessel that had started this incredible journey, watching human and abyssal children playing together in the waves, she realized that they had witnessed something unprecedented in the history of either species. Not the conquest of one civilization by another, but the birth of something entirely new, a hybrid society that combined the best aspects of both surface and depth, technology and nature, individual achievement and collective harmony. The ocean that had once divided two branches of humanity had become the medium through which they would reunite and evolve together toward a future neither could have achieved alone. What do you think this new hybrid civilization will look like in 100 years? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know how you envision the future of this united humanity. Your imagination could help shape the next chapter of this ongoing story. The age of separation was ending. The age of integration had begun. And in the depths of the ocean that connected all life on Earth, two civilizations were learning to become one. The end. This story explores themes of environmental responsibility, the consequences of technological advancement, and the possibility of cooperation between different branches of human evolution. In our current world, where climate change and ocean pollution threaten the delicate balance of marine ecosystems, the questions raised by the abyssal civilization become increasingly relevant. Subscribe to the multiverse of imagination to discover more stories that challenge us to think differently about our relationship with the natural world and the choices we make as a species. The future of our planet may depend on our ability to imagine new ways of living in harmony with the forces that sustain all life.